Are we live? I guess we're live. Hello and namaste, viewers everywhere. On behalf of React Native Bangalore and GeekyAnts, I would like to welcome you to the very first edition of React Native Remote Meetup. My name is Digvijay Vanchu, and I will be your host for this event. First off, in these challenging times, I hope that all of you are keeping safe and well, because that is the most important thing to do right now. Do remember to follow and practice all routines that will keep you safe and healthy. That being said, it will not stop us from talking about React Native and the things that we love about it, and to share the experiences of our speakers and ours with the world. I can assure you we have an amazing lineup for you today, and I'm sure that you will not leave this event without learning anything new. Before we kick off this event, I would like to introduce Sanket Sahu. He is a software engineer, CEO, and co-founder of GeekyAnts. And he will tell you a little bit more about what we are doing here and what you all can expect out of this event.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Sanket. Welcome. Before we begin, I would like to tell you a little bit about Sanket. So he is the CEO and co-founder of GeekyAnts and a software engineer by profession, but at heart, he's a designer. He is the brains behind BuilderX, which is a design tool that codes in React Native for you. And he is also the co-creator of Native Base, which is one of the biggest UI libraries for React Native. Sanket, welcome.
Thank you so much, Digvijay. I'm very excited, and I think you took all my lines, so I think that's it from my side. Anyway, really excited. This one,
Perfect.
yeah. So we are doing React Native Bangalore meetup for the first time remotely. So it's no more React Native Bangalore. It's like React Native remote meetup, or maybe I don't know what that term is. Should it be meetup? Are we meeting in person, or is it like a webinar or a conference? I don't know. It's a mix of all
Well,
those things.
I think it's safe to say that we are React Native worldwide now, because we are catering to everybody in the world at the moment.
Yeah. So things have
That being said, Sanket,
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to let you continue with the keynote, and I
Sure.
will take leave and see you
Okay.
again soon.
Thank you so much, Digvijay. Thank you so much. All right. So good to be here and finally meeting you all virtually. I see that we have a lot of viewers right now. So hello to everyone. And yeah, I'm very excited for React Native remote meetup. Things have changed, and we have changed how we conduct meetups too. I think Digvijay has already introduced me. I'm Sanket, CEO and founder at GeekyAnts. And yeah, going forward, let me tell you a little bit about GeekyAnts. So we are a product studio. We love the dev community of React Native, Flutter, and also Svelte these days. And yeah, some of the projects include Native Base. Native Base is an open source UI library for React Native. And yeah, we have also worked on a design tool called BuilderX. BuilderX is a design tool which actually codes React and React Native for you. I spoke about it this year at React Europe, how we built it from ground up and what the architecture looks like. So if you're looking for something like performance and something like non-standard or a different type of React app, so I would suggest you to check it out. And then we have Native Base. Native Base is a UI component library for React Native. We have reached about 14,000 stars on GitHub. And we keep doing things like this. So all good there. We also have a little bit of Dev Studio on one side. We call it Product Studio. And we have built products for our clients in different domains, which includes social, e-commerce, gaming, fintech, and all those. Coming to React Native Bangalore, we had the first meetup almost 4 years ago. I think the first one was in September 2016 here in Bangalore. And we have come a long way. This is the 15th edition of React Native Bangalore. And we are almost reaching 5,000 people. So React Native Bangalore is the world's biggest React Native meetup group. And it also stands somewhere at, I think, 10 in the entire React meetup groups. The number one is a very good friend of mine, React.js Bangalore, led by Kiran, and we keep like collaborating. So that is really interesting. And yeah, since we are remote, we have tried not to compromise on any aspect. We have tried to set it up just like usual meetups and conferences with a touch of like everything. We've tried to keep the professionalism and the quality really high. You can see the backdrop, like that's not my house. I've got a green screen and changed everything in the background, right? So yeah, but I miss meeting everyone in person. This is, I hope we solve this and get to meet in person as soon as possible, at a bigger scale maybe. And yeah, it's a different experience, right? Speaking to monitor and thinking like, okay, a lot of people are listening to me. So I just hope that it gets better very soon, right? And remote means it's easier to get people speaking from around the world, from everywhere. So we were local and now it's a global meetup group. uh, like we have Alexander from UK and Toby from Nigeria. Very very excited for this. And yeah, and that also brings me to talk about diversity and inclusion. Like React Native Bangalore has seen great speakers from different parts of the country here in India, with different culture and everything. And now it's time to take that global with people from different ethnicity, and that's why we are in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we have the hashtag. So if you want to tweet about React Native Bangalore, go ahead and use hashtag React Native, hashtag RNBLR, and also hashtag Black Lives Matter. And yeah, I hope everyone is staying safe, and all the best for all the speakers. Thank you so much for coming and signing up for this. I just hope everything goes well. Yeah, that's all from my side, Digvijay.
Thank you very much, Sanket. Those were some really encouraging words. And yes, like he said, we are like all lives matter, Black Lives Matter too, and we are in full support of that movement.
Yeah,
So thank you very much for the information, Sanket. I think it's time we kick off this show.
yeah.
Uh, so it's time to kick off this roller coaster of an event. First off, we have the first speaker of the day who's going to join us very soon. He is from Nigeria, Oluwatobi Shokunbi, and he will be talking about taking React Native to infinity and beyond. Toby, hi.
Hi,
Hi,
how
how are
you?
you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Before we begin, a little introduction about Toby. Like us, he is the founder of React Native Nigeria Meetup group, which is amazing. He is currently building Chief, which is, I believe, a service to book chefs and cooks online,
Yeah,
from what I know. And personally, he loves to play ping pong and loves to hike.
you got that right. Yes, um,
I
um,
hope
um, I'm a
so.
big fan of hiking. I try to do it every morning.
Perfect, perfect. That is excellent. So I will let you take the floor now. It's all yours. All the best, and well, take it away.
Hey, thanks. Hello, everyone. As said earlier, my name is Oluwatobi Shokunbi. It's really great to be here, and I hope everyone is doing great and keeping safe. I really want to appreciate the organizers for this opportunity to come give a talk titled React Native to Infinity and Beyond. But before we get started, a little bit about myself, more about myself. So, as he said earlier, I'm a software engineer and the founder of React Native Nigeria community. You can reach out to me with any of the links below. Pretty much, I retweet the events. I'll pretty much retweet and also comment with on Twitter, Medium, or any of the social media platform listed below. So let's get right to our talk. So a little more scope on what we're talking about because it looks a little bit vague. React Native to infinity and beyond. Where the dealers start from? how did we get here, and what are we even talking about? What am I even talking about? So yeah, React Native originally React Native originally started off as a Facebook internal hackathon project in the summer of 2019. Since then, it has not only become one of the most popular frameworks, but it actually solves a problem, and it gets the work done. So it's no surprise companies like Microsoft and even Apple have started including React Native into their projects. In as much as a handful of developers would outline tons of downside to React Native, the fact still remains no framework is without a downside. And besides, React Native has come a long way in its journey and does some really cool, impressive stuff. So, what really is the upside to React Native? Why should you ever consider it to? Why should you ever consider it? And would you ever think for a second you would use React Native and make it your buzz light here in the world of front end development, no matter the platform? So, well, in the course of my talk, I will be taking you on a journey, trying to outline some points why you should consider React Native in your day-to-day development. Also pointing out some areas where it currently performs best in 2020, and of course, I'll try to do this in the time allocated to me. So I do hope you stay tuned to the end of my talk, and of course, I hope you enjoy. So moving on, the time when I had the idea for this talk, way before I handed in the proposal, I got the buzz that I had been working on React Native as a technology, and I have honestly had no issue or need to learn something new. And this was really amazing for me because at the time I was working on projects for desktop applications, mobile application, and as well web. And at the time, and at some point, I had to always make this decision. Do I have to go learn something more native to do some certain things? But funny enough, I would always choose React Native, and every single time I did choose React Native. Most recently, I was consulting for a project, which after I saw the MVP, the project, I knew this wasn't something. I knew this was something different entirely. I would always even try to attempt it with React Native. And funny enough, it's always did get the job done. And one of what I would like to outline here, why I always did choose React Native is, as you can see on the screen, number one was it had a huge community. Better tooling was incorporated. The learn ones run everywhere, and a huge demand in the market. So I'll be taking this one after the other. So the first normal is a huge community, and it's bigger, it's stronger, and it's better than ever before. In the early years of React Native, it was clear a lot of developers had second thoughts why they should dive into this new library or framework or whatnot. React Native was way in over his head, trying to redefine the way we build mobile applications with the whole right ones run everywhere mentality. But then a lot of you would agree that it was bonkers for a tech team to abandon their existing native project built with probably Objective-C or C++, which actually cost to create. And also bear in mind that these companies were battling with competitors, and they have had to put all their eggs in one basket, being React Native, which at the time still had a lot of issues. Mind you, React Native still had issues and was still figuring out a lot of things. The community around React Native was still at its early stage, and there was basically a lot of things to get done. But it's basically 5 years down the road, and looking back, you could see that on GitHub alone, the repo has 85K stars, which is impressive and amazing. That's a lot of stars, and used in 333K repositories. That is a lot of projects actually incorporating React Native. The community around React Native is impressive. Believe it or not, a lot of people love React Native. There's absolutely no doubt people love React Native, and this love has driven a lot of people and startups to start communities around the world, which occasionally hosts meetups, conference, and workshops just like this one. And it's great because it makes it easy for anyone to get started in React Native. It makes it easy for anyone to just decide that they want to get into React Native, and you have a very huge community backing you. One thing to take home is React Native is a tool, and since it's backed by Facebook, it gets timely updates, and the community is expanding, which with each and every passing day. React Native continues to grow. In the last year, React Native use has doubled, going from being installed from 15K apps on the store in 2018 to being installed in over 27K apps in 2019, and only God knows what is going to happen in 2020. So you can see that the momentum in React Native is a lot. A lot of people are hopping on this new library. The next thing I would like to cover is better tooling, and this is really a big deal because if there's one thing that makes any framework or library easy to use, or it's basically the tools that are created specifically for it. And React Native is one to not be losing in this round. A lot of tools and packages exist which makes React Native so easy to use. Some even help to do the tedious work of converting your UI to code, and some exist that helps the whole development process super easy. Tools to help with testing, debugging, upgrading your project. As one of the tools created specifically for React Native are endless. The tools created for React Native are endless. Some of which are bits for React Native, React Native Debugger, React Native Dev Tools, Expo, React App Builder. The list goes on. I could spend the whole day just outlining a lot of tools that currently exist and help the whole React Native ecosystem. But for the sake of time, I'll try to keep it to a minimal and probably just talk about two of those tools, which I find very impressive. So some of the first tool I'll be talking about today is Builder X. This is actually a very impressive tool because I recently just found out about this last year, and I played around with it, and it was actually very impressive. We had a tight deadline for a project, and we were supposed to build a lot of screens, and the amount of developers that were on that team were minimum. So we had to go out and check for what tools are out there that could help our particular project move faster with the workforce that we currently had. And we tried out Builder X. It was beautiful. In less than 2 days, we were able to convert all our screens to code in React Native. Yeah, we had to do a little bit of touching there and there, trying to make everything optimized. But it was amazing how the job that would have taken weeks to do, Builder X was able to help us do it in 2 days. It was really amazing with less hands involved. It's a tool that I would recommend anyone should check out. It's really awesome. It really does a lot. The other one I really like to talk about is Expo. So I use Expo when I'm trying to bootstrap a little project, or I'm working on a package that I would actually put out there on NPM. It's actually a very cool tool. Expo comes with a lot of APIs, which takes out the headache of trying to work with native codes and trying to set up things manually yourself. It comes with a live debugger on your phone, as called an Expo client, where you could actually test your mobile app as you build, be it on Android or iOS, and it also helps in packaging your apps on the cloud. So it's really something you should check out when you're basically getting into React Native for the first time. It really takes out the stress, and I really recommend this for about just any team. Okay, so the next thing I have on my list here is learn once and write everywhere. So one of the main reasons for React Native growing popularity is that it supports development for both iOS and Android. But as of date, React Native handles so much more than Android and iOS. With the introduction of tools like and packages like Expo, React Native Web, React Native macOS, React Native macOS menu, bar templates, React Native tvOS. There are a lot of new cool things that React Native really handles. You no longer need to build your mobile app separately for each type of device, and you want to run it on. You basically have React Native handle a lot of things thanks to the huge community that's always working on React Native. You could actually see React Native run on your tvOS. You can see React Native work on your macOS menu bar. So with React Native, a single code base makes it possible to build your app once and deploy it anywhere, everywhere. With React Native app templates, your team begins their projects with a solid code base, documentation, and a set of screens that cuts down on production costs intensively. So it's something you really want to check out. The growth isn't diminishing but rapidly increasing. It will be great to give it a try. More companies have begun trying out React Native in their day-to-day development by adding React Native to their existing code base, be it in parts or using React Native entirely for the whole project. But whatever you would want to use React Native, it's clear. It's good to know that can get the job done because it helps you. It helps in handling your business logics and sharing it across multiple platforms. A lot of apps, as I said, a lot of apps have been using React Native. I went and did a check, and it was amazing the amount of apps I found that were able to do this. I saw Bing, I saw Microsoft, OneNote. Man, it was really amazing to see that a lot of apps, even the Xbox, have started incorporating React Native because of what and the potential they see in it. Microsoft it will be good to also see Microsoft is actually a very huge fan of React Native. They've actually tried to over time tried to also get in on React Native, trying to incorporate it in their platforms. So one last thing I would like to talk about is the huge demand in the market. So React Native as technology is starting to mature. We tend to see more applications used in React Native store in the App Store as not only small scale business, but also large scale companies have started to use React Native in production. You could actually see this because it was funny when I went to check and I actually saw that Tesla is currently using and supporting React Native for their mobile apps which controls their car. So it's amazing to see React Native being used in all these multiple use cases and getting the job actually done. I also did a search on Google Trend, and this was what I found when I was trying to check React Native against other mobile platform development in iOS and Android. And it's amazing that all over the world, React Native is even having a lot of traction compared to most of all these other current solutions out there. The whole world is really excited about React Native. They want to know what this is all about. And I think you should also get in on it. More apps that use React Native. As I said, Facebook has started using the Facebook Ad Manager. Instagram is a very huge player when it comes to React Native. They use it a lot. Airbnb, even if they stopped for a while. Tesla, Boomerang, SoundCloud Plus, a lot of apps on a large scale have started to use React Native. So in conclusion, it's been 5 years since the official release of React Native. And looking back, it's insane to see it's reached this level of growth. It's awesome. It's an awesome thing it currently handles in day-to-day development. Popularity of this framework would definitely grow. It's still supported by Facebook, and this is one factor which is responsible for the steady growth. Also, users' problems and community suggestions are quickly addressed. Solutions come regularly as part of next release. The team behind the framework is constantly modernizing its architecture. The aim is to make React Native more lightweight by reducing API surface areas and thus migrating to formal built-in WebView, NetInfo, and geolocation into separate independent packages. And thanks to this, improves the speed of the app created with this library. Moreover, there is a JavaScript engine being developed, which is called Hermes. You could also check that out. That improves React Native performance on Android. So you really don't have anything to worry about here. The current time we live in has driven the world to rely on applications and user interfacing products. React Native has beyond a doubt performed and is still performing and getting the job done, giving the ability to not only target one platform, but all front-end platforms. And it will be a thing of joy to actually see it reach this in the nearest future. I will employ you to try out React Native in your next project and see it be your own boss light here in the world of front-end development. My recommendation for 2020 would be for you to give React Native a try, at least. Thank you very much. Also, feel free to connect to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Medium, and on YouTube. Would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. I hope I can. I hope I'm audible to you. Am I?
Yes, you are. You are. You are.
Perfect. Thank you for all that. So we were waiting for questions from the viewers on YouTube and Twitter for from
Oh,
any questions that they might have. But there is this one comment by just another gamer that he mentions that Microsoft is actually planning to rebuild the Xbox app with a standalone React Native. So what do you think? What are your views on that? Do you think it'll work? Do you think React Native is ready for such a big scale app?
well, the interesting thing about this is that when React Native came out, no one thought it was ready for anything. If everyone had their doubts that it probably couldn't handle that, it probably couldn't do this. But I feel React Native is at that stage where it's ready to try it out, and really do a lot more and change the way we think about probably front end development in general. I feel it's getting there, and I feel we are there. React Native in performance compared 5 years ago, it's drastically different. It does much more than what you probably think it does. So yes, I think it's ready to do that.
Well, I think that's mainly contributed to it being open source, and since Facebook is putting in a lot of time in this, and the open source community, it's such a big backing
Yeah,
that everybody is trying to improve it at all times. Everybody is
yeah.
contributing equally.
Yes, and it's one thing when just a company is working on it, and it's something where the entire world is working on it. React Native isn't just Facebook alone; it's more of community. So if you really look at React Native, it's basically we are all building it together. We are all trying to make this better because we all use it. So yeah, it is.
That is right. Okay, I guess that's all the questions that we have for now for you. We will get back to you perhaps if somebody does ask anything that
Sure.
you can probably answer.
Try.
Thank you very much, Toby. Thank you for being here. We'll just move on with the show.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks.
Okay, so that was Toby, and he was talking about why React Native is probably the best out there. Next up, we have Vinay Sharma. Vinay Sharma is a resident software engineer at GeekyAnts, and he will be talking about handling complex animations in React Native. So we'll have Vinay Sharma join the stream.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi,
Vinay. Can
Digvijay.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm audible?
Wonderful. Yes, you are. Welcome to the React Native remote meetup.
Yeah, thank you very much. So,
Before
hi,
we
everybody.
before we begin, a small introduction for Vinay. He is by profession a software engineer, and he works with us at GeekyAnts. But in his free time, he loves to cook a lot, and he is also a music producer and a DJ in his free time.
Yeah,
So
so I think Digvijay has completely completed all my lines that I had to say. Yeah. So, this in the quarantine, I've been cooking a lot. So I've been cooking a lot of things, and I love producing music. And yeah, so it's really interesting to be present over here. And again, thank you very much, Digvijay, for presenting this amazing, organizing this amazing reactive meetup today.
Thank you. So Vinay,
Yeah,
I'll let all the viewers listen to what you have to say. All the
sure.
best and take it away.
So, hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about something really interesting in React Native. Like, it's going to be about how can we actually handle the how to handle complex animations at React Native. So there are some points that we are going to look at. So why animations at first place are really required in any application that we build. Second, we are going to look at the challenges that we face as a developer, and then we are going to look at a really cool demonstration. So looking at the points like why React Native is required. So it enhances the user experience of our application at very first go. It makes our application really immersive, and it makes it really interesting to use our application. It increases our user engagement, because no one really likes to use any application which doesn't seem to have any animation these days. And it attracts attention to important elements and functions in our application. So if we have really small elements, like they are really minuscule in nature, so with animation we can actually show to our user like how they really function, and we can help identify connections between various components in our views which animate. And it will help us give a feedback to the user, like whatever the action they're performing in our application. Like if we don't really have any kind of animation, it becomes really difficult for the user to interpret what's happening in our app. Now, coming on to the challenges. So animations are quite overwhelming at first. So let's suppose any designer shows you any animation that you want to do. So looking at very having a first glance at it, it looks like really impossible to do. It's so over time the animation get really complex, and it gets difficult to maintain 60 fps, where we have to then make a decision. I feel like it shouldn't really be a decision. Like we should always opt for running our animations on native thread and running our business logic on the JavaScript thread, so that there are not really any kind of frame drops. So, and then we have to support the devices of all dimensions. So just like we have to keep the layout responsive for all the dimensions of the devices, we also need to make sure like the animations are working properly and there are not really any kind of glitches, no matter what kind of device we're using. And again, so we have a phobia of learning a new API. So that's something I've personally faced. So it was about the React Native's animated API. So a little glance of it, how does it really work? So you can import it from React Native, and it gives you an animated value with that constructor where you can supply the initial value which you want to set to it. And once you have that value, you can animate it using the animated API, where you specify the value to which it should animate. You can even specify the delay. So for example, here I've set 500 milliseconds. Then we have duration. So you want to specify for how many seconds this animation should work. And then you need to specify if you want to use the native driver or not. If you set it to true, the entire animation would work on native thread without blocking anything in your JavaScript thread. And then React Native also provides you an animated view in which you can provide the styling for your opacity, which is animated being here. Coming on to the next, let's suppose that we want to run parallel animations, and over here we can animate two things like opacity and translate Y. And again, animated is imported from React Native. Opacity and translate Y are two things that we are going to animate in parallel. So then we can wrap the entire animation with the parallel animation provided by React Native, in which we can specify all the animation that we want to animate, such as opacity, translate Y, and then we can another again have our view over here that we want to animate. It goes like this way. After that, let's suppose that we want to animate our animations in a sequence. So over here we have the same animated values. So we are going to wrap our animations with the sequence. Over here, let's suppose that we want to run the opacity first. So we specify opacity, And then we have the delay. So let's suppose that I want to fade in my view, and then I want to delay for 1 second. So it will delay for a second or so. And then let's suppose that we want to translate it downward. So we can just write it in over there. And again, we have animated view that we can use for the animations. So now we are going to look at the demonstration. So this demonstration is more like a custom navigation, which will handle the animation when we transition from one screen to another screen. And it's this problem is basically known as shared element transition, where in React Native it feels like an element is being shared between two different screens. So this is what animation looks like. So this is the splash screen where you can see like the image translates upwards and then zooms in to the home screen. And it makes it feel like as if this image is common to both the home screen as well as splash screen. So the best thing of this animation is like this is entirely built on the native thread. So that means you don't really have any frame drops. You won't really have any performance issues on the animation side. So I guess let's just jump straight into how does it really work. We're going to first look at how is the splash screen actually structured. So over here, I'm not using safe area view. First of all, I'm gonna tell why in the later on. So I'm using the React Native safe area, which provides us this padding from the top and the bottom. If we have any phone with any notch asset, we get to know what is the required padding for the safe areas. And then as you see, as you just saw in the previous slide, the splash images were totally random. So I'm just generating the random splash images using this math function, which will give me a image from across all these splash images that I have. So this is the container that I'm using. So over here, this is the onLayout event, which is used by the view. So why this is required is like I need to calculate like what is the exact distance this image should translate upward. So actually this image is positioned over here using justify contains and align item center. So I don't really know what is the distance that it should really translate from here. So how I'm going to calculate this view is going to provide whatever its height is, and then we are going to calculate whatever the height is between these white portions. So we can get it by subtracting the height of the image by the image of the view and dividing it by 2. So using this, we get the height of the container over here, which we need to translate it upwards. And then we need to subtract the height of the header. And then we need to subtract the padding from the top. Now, the reason why I didn't use safe area view was like there was some problem and the onLayout event was getting called twice. So in order to avoid that, I use this padding top and bottom, which is provided by React Native safe area. And then coming on to the structure over here, we have the splash screen header, which over here you can see it says shade element transition. And then we have the header, which is related to the home screen, and it says React Native Meet 2020, which you will see in the home screen. So actually React Native doesn't really provide any way to share the elements between two screens. So I've actually used the same view common to both the home screen as well as splash screen. And there comes the animated image. So whatever the image that was calculated earlier, it was the random image I've supplied at the source, and this is the styling for it. And we are going to translate it upwards using this transform property. Later on, we look at the splash screen breakdown. So it's just nothing much complex. We are going to run two animations in parallel. First, we are going to fade in the home header, which is over here at the top, you can see. And then we have another animation which will help us translate this image to the top. Once that is done, we are going to navigate to the home screen and passing the splash image that is random to the home screen so that we keep track of how the which splash image is used. You can even keep this logic in Redux if you want to maintain the common splash images across both the splash and home screen. So component of the home image structure. So it feels like image is zooming in, but that's not the case over here because image manipulation is really expensive and it can really affect the performance of the application. Whenever you're trying to manipulate an image, there are definitely chances of frame drops. So how I actually maintained is, like, we have this image, and then you can also see like there will be some borders on the top and bottom. So they are actually not borders, they are views with the width of just 1 pixel, and it just feels like as if the borders are being animated. And then there are basically actually these pseudo borders that I've used, and what they do is, like, they translate in the opposite direction, so as if to make it feel like the image is zooming in. So how does it look like? So I've actually calculated the width of each of these views by subtracting the width of the image with the device width and dividing it by 2, which equally distributes the dimension for these. And these are actually the animated views which are going to, move. This one is going to move to the left side, this one is going to the right side, and which will make it feel like as if our image is zooming in. And this is our right border. So once we have done with the home image structure, this is what the image will feel like. So these appear, and then they just translate to their respective directions, and it just totally feels like as if my image has totally zoomed in. So here is the animation that I'm using. So opacity, so it is being used for the borders that you can see over here. Like, there are really slim borders at the top and the bottom, the black colored borders, and this is going to translate my left sided pseudo border, and this is going to translate and animate my right sided border to make it feel like as if the image is being zoomed in. So once that is done, the entire animations are done. I'm just conditionally rendering these side borders. So I just set it to false, which makes it unmount from our React Native view. And after that, second breakdown would be like I've added a white colored overlay so that the text becomes more visible over here. So just like to increase the contrast between the image and the text. So I've just again absolutely positioned a view over here with the background color of white and some kind of an opacity. So this is the absolutely positioned view, and we have some animations which were already running in parallel, and then we have added a new animation which will animate the overlay opacity. Coming to this third breakdown, I'm going to actually zoom in and overlay, and then after that you can even see that like I'm increasing the blur of the image. So how does it really function? So actually, if we just try to animate the blur radius value by animated API, it will drop your frame rates. So in order to prevent that, what I've done is like I've added another image on top of this one, which is absolutely positioned, and its z index is probably less than the z index of all those borders which are at the left and right hand side. So what's happening is like I've given a blur radius to it. For some reason, Android tends to take more blur value if I set as 10. So I've just kept it as a ratio. Like for iOS, it's going to be 10, and for the Android, it's going to be 2. So what's happening is like I'm just fading it in. So this image is absolutely positioned on top of it, and instead of animating the blur radius, it just makes it feels like and actually I'm animating the blur of the image that was already being used. So coming on the fourth breakdown, it's nothing much complex. I'm just using this view, which is again absolutely positioned on top of my image, which is just zooming in along with the splash image and fading it in. Over here you can see like we have already used the opacity which was being already used to animate this view. And now coming on to the home button structure. So it looks like as if we are drawing the borders of these buttons, but it's not really it's not really something that I'm doing over here. I'm not really actually animating the borders of the buttons. So first of all, let's look at the button structure over here. So over here, like you can see, like I have used Flex one for this entire view, and over there I am again using the on layout API, which will help me calculate whatever the height of this is. So why am I using it? Like this is actually a view of width 1. So what it's going to do is it's going to translate from upward to the down. So as if feel like I'm actually drawing the borders of this button. So once that is done, I calculate the height of that border. I set animate to true. So basically it's a Boolean check To start the animations only once we receive the height of this entire view, and then we set the value of translate y animated value. So this is basically a function which is provided by a React Native animated API to directly set the value of any animated value directly without animating it. So again, over here, we have this translate x. So basically this is the variable, this is the animated variable, which will help us translate this horizontal border. And initially its value is set to the device width. So it's going to, it's going to be initially over here, positioned somewhere around about here. And once we start the animation, it will just slide in from here over here. And that's the animated view over here. So I'm not really using any kind of margins or padding to provide to this button view. So if I provide any kind of margin or padding, what will happen is this view, when it slides in from the left, it will be visible in this area. So to provide that, I've added this left border and this right border. So as if like to make the user feel like there's actually some padding over here, but whereas it's actually not. So coming on to this, over here we have the vertical border. Initially its value is set to 0, but once we get the native event working, we can actually calculate the value of whatever the height of this is, and we are later on going to set it to the height of this view. And later on, these are the buttons that are mapped over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, which are going to be present over here, and they're just simply going to fade in. And then we have this right border over here. So coming on to the breakdown of how these buttons actually animate. So that's how the actual thing is actually working on. So on the home screen, these are the borders that are zooming in the splash image, and this is the border which comes on from the top, and this one is the border which comes on from the left, which makes it feels like as if I'm actually animating the borders of my buttons. So this is what the animation looks like. I'm using an opacity to animate the opacity of all my buttons. And if animate is true, so like I said, I don't want to animate it before I get the height of this entire view from that native event. So once that is done, I'm going to run these animations in parallel. Opacity, okay, opacity, which will help me which will help me fade in the buttons. And then we have translate y, which will help me translate this particular view from the top and the bottom. And at the end, we have translate x, which will help me translate from left to right. So this was the home button breakdown for the entire animation. And over here, you can see like there's another like footer. So as to just fill up the space, I'm just translating it from the top to the bottom, from bottom to the top. So the ultimate goal was no frame drops, achieve butter smooth 60 fps animations. So in order to test it, you can just run this piece of code, and this will entirely block the JavaScript thread, and still you can see the animations are running at butter smooth. And to make the animation totally responsive, this is the video of iPhone 8. So over here you can see 60 fps animation and responsive app design. So let's have any questions if you guys have.
Uh, Vinay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. So we have a few questions from our viewers online. Israr
Sure.
Sheikh wants you to share the repo link of this animation. So if you could do that post the event, that would be wonderful. Israr, you can follow Vinay on his Twitter account, and he will be able to share the GitHub repo there with you and
Okay,
everybody else.
so GitHub repo is definitely on the end slide where I'm going to thank for joining in with me. That's definitely present over there.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
Also, we have another question from Rajat, who wants to ask which is better to use, a React Native animated or the React Native animated API 2?
Um, can you just repeat that once again? Like React Native
Sure.
animated and React Native animated too?
So Rajat wants to know which API is better to use, React Native animated or React Native animated API 2?
I think uh, the latter one he's trying to say is React Native reanimated tool. Can we just get some correction if it's if he's trying to say that one? Because the only
Sure,
library
we'll.
that I'm aware of is React Native reanimated.
Okay, okay. Another question that we have is by uh, just another gamer again. He asks, the native driver works differently for Android and iOS. What would your suggestions be to handle animations to be responsive on both platforms using use native driver?
So like I was talking, to make the animations as much responsive as possible. Well, definitely, if native driver works differently on Android and iOS, I don't think it's something related to the responsiveness, because responsiveness is something like you have to deal with the various dimensions of heights and width of the views that you're using. So my suggestion would be to definitely use Flexbox as much as possible. So my entire animations are totally, they're not using any hard coded values as such, except the splash image. So the height and width of that is set to the, 0.7 times the height of the device height. And this is the only hard coded value that I'm using. Apart from that, for responsiveness, you can definitely use Flexbox.
Right. So Rajat just got back to us and he
Yeah.
corrected his question. So it does mean reanimate too. So which one do
Yeah.
you think is
So
better?
definitely React Native reanimated 2 is definitely better, because you don't really need to worry much about the native drivers as such. I guess it works on native itself, but the thing is, like, even I was like thinking about presenting about that as well, because but I have seen like they haven't really posted much about the documentations as such about React Native reanimated 2. But definitely once their documentation is totally upright, I'll prefer to use React Native reanimated 2. It's way much better than animated API.
Right. Rajat, I hope that answers your question. We have time for one more question, which is
Sure.
by Rajan Preet Singh. He asks, how reliable is animated view for 90 FPS?
Okay, so that's something I've not really tried on, because most of the mobile devices that we have currently are 60 FPS, and there are only few devices which can go north of 90 hertz or 120 FPS. Like I guess OnePlus has and Samsung S20 has. So I'm not really sure if animated view would be able to handle 90 FPS, but I'm definitely sure about 60 FPS.
Right. Wonderful. So
Yeah.
Vinay, I'll let you quickly close up your presentation, share the GitHub link, and wrap it up as you like.
All right. So thank you very much. That's my GitHub repository. You can definitely check it out. Clone it, experiment with it, and let me know if there's any errors or bugs in it. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vinay. Thank you for sharing all of your experiments with the animations in React Native. Uh, so moving on with the event, we have Samip Shah. He is a software engineer and a business development executive with working with Julio Private Limited in Singapore. Uh, can we have him on with us? I think he's online.
Hear me?
Uh,
Hello, can you hear me?
yep, Samip is here. Hi, Samip.
Hi,
Yes, yes, you're
Digvijay.
very much audible. Am I?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm
I
doing
see you are
wonderful. How are
Sankeet
you?
and very good. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Thank you, thank you. Well, it's just something I picked up. I really like the t-shirt, so I got it. I mean, yeah. So a little bit about Samip. He works he works as a business development executive, but he's also a React Native developer at the same time, which is a very unique combination for a profession. He also loves to meditate, and he also loves to travel. I don't know how many places he has traveled to, so I'd let him talk about that. So Samip, if we will share the screen, and if you can put on your presentation, we will continue.
Yeah. Can you see my presentation? Can you see my
Yes, we
screen?
can.
Okay.
Yes, we can. So, Samip, I will leave you to your presentation. Take it away. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thanks, Digvijay. Hello, all. Nice to meet you. I'm a bit nervous because after a long time, I'm doing a technical presentation. But I love Redux Toolkit. So this is about Redux Toolkit. Redux Toolkit is one of those libraries which you first see. For me, I used to wake up at night and dream of all the refactoring that I'm going to do with it. So that's why I thought I will share today. We have only 15 minutes, and I did a pre-demo with my friend. I wanted to do like a code sharing and a screen sharing live demo, but we could not fit it in. And unfortunately, I did not make such cool like animations like Vinay. I think he showed it very well with a live demo, but I'm just going to stick to the PPT and some code. So basically, Redux to today's presentation, right? Probably there is three kind of people here. People who haven't used Redux or new to Redux. Probably this is not the best presentation for them. Secondly, people who using Redux but are not using Redux toolkit, and I think they will get a lot of value from it. And lastly, it's people who already know Redux toolkit. In that case, please stand by and let me know your thoughts and your opinions and your feedbacks. So let's start. Today, I'm going to actually divide it into three parts. First is introduction. Second is async calls with create async thunk. And then something called create entity adapter, which actually is very cool. Maybe I should give an introduction first. So Redux Toolkit, right, is a package built by the maintainers and developers of Redux itself. And because Redux and React Native are so unopinionated, sometimes you find people, especially when you work in a team, writing all sorts of different methods of writing. So Redux Toolkit is slightly opinionated. It provides a way to do things. Secondly, it also reduces a lot of boilerplate code, which is what I really like about it. And also, it reduces a lot of complexities and provides some helper functions, which we're gonna talk about today. Basically, it's just a wrapper built on top of Redux. Basically, it's Redux, and it just helps you write code easily and faster, basically. So the main benefits of using Redux Toolkit, right, is it automatically creates your action types and reducers. I'll show what that is later. And because it integrates with something called Immer.js, it helps us write mutative code, because if you know Redux, you have to make sure you use object assign or spread operator and things like that to make sure you never mutate your code in your reducer. Second, it allows us some functions to easily perform async calls with Redux thunk, and also perform create, read, update, delete operations on your data, and also provides you some selectors to display data in your component. So before, right, I used to use other different libraries like Normalizer, Immer.js, Reselect to do all these things. But with Redux Toolkit, right, I found that it's all in one package. So let's get to the code. So basically, a quick example, right, is without Redux Toolkit, right, first you create your action types, and then you dispatch you create your actions, and then you write your reducer. So here, right, for me, always writing increment is equal to increment, and handling mutative code. It's a lot of boilerplate, and for me, I'm a lazy guy, so it's a lot of repetitive work. So with Redux Toolkit, right, they provide a function called create slice. Basically, a slice is something like a piece of the state, or you can call it like a reducer, which accepts values for slice name, initial state, and allows you to define the reducers inside the create slice. So instead of having to explicitly specify types and then doing a switch case for all your types, with Redux Toolkit, right, you can basically create action types. In this case, is increment, decrement, increment by value, sorry, increment by amount, and the name of the reducer case is the same as the name of the action, which you can see right at the bottom. I think a little bit is cut off here. Sorry about that. So it's counter slice dot actions. So basically, you okay, oops, you can export these actions from the account from the slice.actions object and then use them in your component directly. So basically, if I dispatch increment action, it will fire this reducer. So you can see how it makes it easier to code. Second, I'm going to move on to something called create async thunk. Basically, this is related to Redux thunk. We usually use Redux thunk or Redux Saga to get API to get data from the API. And with thunk, right, this is an example of how you use Redux thunk to get data from an API. For example, first you create your actions, again you dispatch the loading state, you get your data from the API using fetch or Axios, and then you dispatch the success method, success call, and then you catch in terms of error. If there is a error is thrown, you dispatch the failed action. So with this, right, and the data in the reducer, again, you use pred operator or object.assign to make sure that you don't mutate your code. So let's see how we would do the same thing with Redux Toolkit. So we use a Redux Toolkit method called create async thunk, which actually comes out of the box with Redux Toolkit. And basically it accepts two arguments. First is the name, and the second is a callback function where you do your logic to fetch your data and so forth. Interesting thing here, if you see, is there is no actions fired for loading state, success state, or catching an error. So the benefit of Redux Toolkit create async thunk, right, is it actually passes these actions automatically based on the state of the thunk. So when the thunk starts, it automatically passes what is called a dot pending action. So basically, how you would do this is in your create slice, you have an extra key for extra reducers, and you just pass actions with the names fetch the name of your thunk and dot pending, dot fulfilled, and dot rejected. These are like standard nomenclature, so you need to use that. But basically, inside that, right, you can do all the updates to your store that you want. There is one more thing I have used here is entity adapter, which I will share what it is next. But basically, what you need to do here is just update the data in your store, however you do it. And another thing that you notice, same as the previous one, is we don't use spread operator or object.assign because we're using something called emmer.js under the hood. Redux Toolkit uses it under the hood. So you just write mutative code. You don't need to worry about writing immutable code and so forth. So you just write state.variable is equal to value, basically. And then so this is create async thunk. The callback, right, accepts on the left, the callback will accept two arguments, data, which is actually whatever data you want to pass to this thunk, whether it's like, for example, if it's a login form, it's going to be your username and password. And second thing is thunk API, which exposes is an object containing all the parameters which is normally if you want something other action or get state to access the store. Another interesting thing is reject with value. This is used when actually you want to catch an error with a specific, let's say a specific error code. So this is the create async thunk API. Ideally, I would like to stop for questions, but I think the questions are at the end. So I will just continue. The last thing that I want to share, right, is create entity adapter. Create entity adapter is a function that provides you with a set of pre-built helpers and selectors for performing create, read, update, delete operations on a normalized state structure. What is a normalized state structure? So normalized state structure usually, right, when the data is written from the API, and if the data is too deeply nested, because Redux recommends you to have as shallow a state shape as possible in your store. So create entity adapter will allow you to accept the data and save it as an array of IDs and a lookup table, which is an object of all your objects. this data. So let's see how it looks. Basically, you just use the create entity adapter from Redux Toolkit, and then in your reducer, this is the adapter that we have created, list adapter. It provides you with certain functions. One of them is set all. So basically, we return the response of data promise, response to data from our async thunk. So basically, we just use the action.payload.data, and you use the set all helper method. And set all is, for example, set all is a method which sets all the entities you receive. So basically, there is some CRUD functions which actually allow you to easily add, remove, upsert, edit, add multiple, remove multiple elements from your state. So this is especially helpful when you're working with a list, like a list of users, or you want to add one user, or you want to go to next page. So instead of, I hope you can see how instead of writing too much complex logic, these helper functions, right, really help you to write code much faster. And because they come out of the box, you will save a lot of headache with debugging it and finding bugs and so forth. So this is an example of how the normalized data is saved using set all. Is when let's say we receive seven elements from the server. You can see it's an array of IDs and an object of entities, which is actually your data. Now, list adapter also allows you a way to sort your data. If, let's say, you want to sort by first name or last name, if you don't sort it, it just saves it in the way it receives from the API. And if your ID field is different from .id, you can specify it also. So this is saving data in your state. This is all about saving data in your state in your reducer. The second benefit of, sorry, I think I tilted my screen. The second benefit of entity adapter, right, is, let me just see if my screen is showing correct. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I was just checking if my screen is showing correctly. The second benefit of create entity adapter is it exposes certain selector functions. Now, what is a selector? Basically, right, when you use you display your data on your mobile with React Native, you usually use a component like flat list or section list to display the data. And all these components typically take in an array, object array of the data to display. But just now, we actually saved it in not an object array. We saved it in an object, entities object. So why we did it? Because this is the recommended way. Second, it actually allows us to access any element quickly. Like let's say you want ID 7. Because the key of the entities object is always the ID, you can easily access it by O notation 1 speed instead of having to look through all. But when you want to display it as a list, you need to select, that is, get the array list of all your objects. So for this, create entity adapter offers some selector functions. The most commonly used will be select all, whereby it maps over all the state.ids and then returns them in the same order. So basically, an example would be in your map state to props. You can just use the selector, select all, and display all the elements. Another options is, oops, so sorry. You can select only the IDs. You can select by ID. You can get the total number and so forth. So this is the benefit of entity adapter. One, it helps you easily, it offers some CRUD functions to easily save your data in your reducer without having to write all this complex logic yourself. Second is it exposes some selector functions, which actually allows you to display them in your component. The last thing I want to say about this selector function is they're actually, I think, under the hood using this library called reselect.js, which what it does, it memoizes the data. What does it mean? It means that if the data doesn't change and your component re-renders, it does a shallow comparison with the previous data, and if it's unchanged, then it just returns the same data. So what it means is, because whenever if you are into performance, you have to be very sure that your props don't change, otherwise your component will re-render. But because the Redux toolkit uses reselect.js under the hood, basically, unless the props really change, I mean, unless the data really changes, the selector function is actually technically not recalculated, which will save you rendering time on your screen. So that's actually about Redux toolkit. I wanted to show a demo, but I don't think we have time. To recap the main benefits, right? We can auto create action types and reducers and write mutative code. Basically, you don't need to create. Oops. Sorry, I'm so sorry to go back, but I want to show this. Basically, you don't need to create the action types again, and you don't need to create reducers for them, because it automatically creates for you. Second is, you can use immer.js to write mutative code. You can easily create thunks, and it auto creates your extra reducers, which is your loading, success, and fail cases. It allows you to perform CRUD operations on your data, so you can save it in whatever kind of data you want, whether it's one or all or edit. And lastly, it allows you to select the data to display in your component. I want to give a shout out to reactiveflux Redux community, because this is a very helpful community. Sometimes I go on there. If you are on there also, hello. And you can ask all your questions. In fact, the developers of Redux and Redux Toolkit actively answer your questions there. So I'm grateful for them. And I have added some references for the libraries that I mentioned. And keep in touch. If you have any collaboration opportunities, you feel free to get back to me. So that's all from my side. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Samip, for all that informative information that you provided. We actually have a ton of questions here for. The first one is from Hemant, and he asks, which middleware do you prefer, Thunk or Saga? And does Redux Toolkit provide Saga, like create async Thunk?
Redux Toolkit allows you to add your custom middleware, including Redux Saga, but it does not provide a helper function for Redux Saga like create async Thunk. So you can still write sagas using Redux Toolkit. It's just that it's just like a normal sagas. There is no helper functions, but yes, it's supported. Secondly, personally, I think Redux Saga has a lot of features, and it's very easy to test it. But for me, I still prefer Thunks, mainly because Redux Toolkit offers create async Thunk, and usually, unless you are working on a very big app, it's actually good enough.
Right. I hope that answers your question, Hemant. We have another question from Rohit. Rohit asks, do we have an option to inject reducers at runtime?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
Yes, Rohit is asking, do we have an option to inject reducers at runtime?
Sorry, I don't know what that means. Apologies, I can't answer.
Okay. The question that we have is from Rashmi. She asks, how do I share between two reducers? Do I have to use combined reducers?
I think she's talking about how to combine the reducers. And yes, you can. You don't need to use combined reducers. Actually, you can use something called create store, which Redux Toolkit offers, which will combine your reducers. And if you want to share data between reducers, you can use the get state helper function inside your Thunk.
Right. I hope that answers your question, Rashmi. We have one last question from Just Another Gamer. He mentions that Redux Toolkit might really help him reduce extra coding for maintaining state. But is the learning curve a little tough? Do you have any recommendations for getting started with this toolkit?
Actually, the official docs which I have linked are very good. I recommend you to check them out, and they're quite easy. Actually, the reason I shared this presentation today is because Redux Toolkit is kind of new, there is not so many in-depth tutorials about it, especially create entity adapter and create async thunk. So you might have to play around with yourself, but I think its learning curve is very easy, and for me it's very exciting because I like Redux. So I think it will be fun. I do plan to write some tutorials on it to make it easy, but there is no due date on it yet.
Well, I hope those words make it give just another gamer some hope to start with this toolkit. Um, I guess that's all we have for now. Thank you very much for your time, Samip, and thank you for sharing everything that you had.
Thank you
It
so
was
much,
lovely to have.
Native Base GeekyAnts. Actually, yeah, I just want to say I use Native Base a lot, especially the toast and the card, all these components. So I use it in production apps. So you the guys have done a great job. So thanks a lot.
Well, it makes me happy to hear that, and Sanket must be ecstatic right now. Anyway, so we will continue with the show. Thank you very much, Samip. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
So that was Samip Shah talking about Redux Toolkit and how you can get started with it and how it can help you create better apps and manage state better. So moving on, we have Alexander Thomas from the UK. He is going to be talking about made to order apps, which I think he would be in a better position to explain. We'll have Alex join us.
Hey there.
Good day to you, Alex. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Bit chilly, but I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Just as a small introduction, Alexander Thomas. Alex likes to call himself a React Native extremist. I do not know why. He is the creator of Mapsy, which is a tool that has something to do with GPS. I'm not saying anything. I want him to tell you about it. And he loves to open source new things on GitHub in React Native repeatedly. So Alex, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I will let you take it away.
Right, let's do it. I'll just share my screen. Right. Okay, so hopefully that's coming through to you guys now. There we go. Big infinity screen. Let's do this. So hi everyone. Right before I get started, I'd just like to give a huge thanks to GeekyAnts for inviting me to talk today. I love React Native. I love this technology, so it's a really great honor to be here to talk to you all. And also, I'd really like to thank them for Native Base as well. It is such an awesome UI framework. It has saved me countless hours back in production during my development. So I really appreciate you guys open sourcing it. So just a brief introduction. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm based in the UK, and I've been developing in React Native for around 3.5 years now. And if you follow me on Twitter or on GitHub, you know that I publish a ridiculous amount of React Native open source, to the point that you might start to think I have a kind of problem. I'm like addicted to doing it. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is what we call made to order apps. And I really want to cover kind of two main themes in this presentation. The first is just sort of the conventional sort of challenges and decisions that you have to make when you're working on a made to order app. And secondly, I just want to really emphasize what a tremendous technology React Native is for building a made to order app. So just as a nice baseline, because you probably sat there wondering, what is a made to order app? Like, what is he talking about? What is a made to order app? The way that I like to think of it is that it's our kind of standard native application, except we offset as much of the sort of style and presentation and configuration element to the API as we can. So the reason we do this is because we can essentially offset all of the kind of like stylistic and presentational content way past compilation is finished. So what that means is that you can basically restyle and reconfigure your application a lot while it's in production without actually having to make a new application build. The reason you design an application like this is because they're actually extremely good sources of revenue. So there's two main reasons for this. The first is that you can essentially offer a client a really bespoke look and feel. So an app which is going to properly convey their brand theme and their sort of company identity, but you can offer it at a fraction of the price that it would be to have the exact same app but built from the ground up. And the reason that it's so cheap by comparison is because you effectively get to keep selling the exact same code. So you put the same amount of development effort into designing your application, but you can just keep selling it multiple times to multiple different customers, because it can essentially be rethemed and reconfigured so they look visually distinct from one another, which means that in terms of your delivery, there's a lot more value in the features that you deliver as opposed to just writing one feature that's only ever going to be in one app. Another really interesting property about a made-to-order app is that the analytics are quite rich, in the sense that if you're given essentially the same core code base to lots of different user bases who are using it in slightly different operational contexts, because your clients might be slightly different, you get to see how your application really uses and varies between these kind of contexts. So you get really rich sort of analytics and understanding about your user's experience, and also it helps drive new features as well. It's also a really nice design in the sense as well that, you know, if you're building a feature for one customer, it's quite likely that other customers will like it too. So you're constantly providing value to everybody who has your application. Now, the way these traditionally work, and this is if you are working on a made-to-order app at the moment, this is probably how you do it. You boot up your application, it hits your API, and it says, hey, I'm this customer today. Give me all of the information I need to look and present the feel of being this customer's app. And the API will essentially send you a bunch of configuration data, so usually just some JSON, that the app will assign to all of the views and things like that, all behind a splash screen, so a user actually won't see any of this happening. And then once all that's been assigned, the splash screen gets dismissed, and then the user's left with what feels like a bespoke custom app. One of the things to really emphasize is that you want to minimize the total number of compiled assets and styles as possible. You want to place as much emphasis on having a configurable API to return this information for you, because you want to really reduce the amount of time you're going to have to make another build whenever a customer wants to be able to change something little. You got to think that if you're reselling the same app, and because it's a lot cheaper, you can sell it to far more customers. Obviously, your operational difficulties increase. If one customer wants to have a change, you really don't want to damage your sprint by having to make a new compile build for them. It all sounds really good from the top level, but I should emphasize that there are some caveats to making a made-to-order app. Most notably is that feature parity is traditionally extremely difficult. So, you know, if you're giving some style information to both an Android platform and an iOS platform, the operating system or the developer, and let's be honest, it's normally the developer, they can have some opinionated decisions on how to interpret particular style flags, which can lead sometimes to ambiguity in the presentation content, but also functionally as well. So that has been quite difficult to manage. Additionally, complexity scales with configurability. So if you really, really want to create an application which truly identifies with your customer's brand, it means that there's a lot of very fine tuning that's required to make sure that that branding conveys itself appropriately. And now when we think that every single style key that we use that's served from the API into our app has to be parsed and validated and sanitized and cached, propagated into our view, and then finally causing a re-render, you realize that that's actually quite a significant engineering challenge to maintain. And if you're really trying to reflect a customer's brand with all these minor keys, you know, that becomes quite a complicated thing to do. And possibly worst of all is that this sort of approach requires your front-end developer to talk to your back-end database admin about the minutiae of front-end design, which is a conversation which can only go badly. But it's no secret that React Native has actually solved a lot of these issues, most notably maintaining feature parity. Because when we're talking about, React Native being a cross-platform language, when we're accepting style information and propagating it into our views, we're all defining that really in a business logic kind of layer using cross-platform JavaScript, meaning that there's very little case where this sort of presentational ambiguity comes from anymore. Additionally, the style sheet that React Native provides is so comprehensive and broad, and you can really achieve quite some powerful effects, like the other presenters have shown us. And the fact that these are all presented using, using component props, which fundamentally is just like can be considered primitive JSON objects. It means that your API can actually serve these, and React can consume them very easily because they're effectively talking the same language. So it means you can really open a very wide scale of configurability quite simply. Additionally, when we use the React context as a theme provider, it becomes almost trivial to expose this quite deep level of customization to deeply nested child components of your app. So no matter how small the style changes you want to do to, no matter how deep a component, you can pretty much have the guarantee that React Native is going to propagate those changes for you reliably. So it's extremely awesome. So you're probably saying right now, okay, I get it, styling's easy in React Native, you're talking a bit too much about styling. And if you think that, you're right. I would say that made-to-order apps have traditionally always been about this kind of simple kind of high-level styling in terms of giving a color palette to your app or providing some simple Boolean switches for feature toggles and simple text overrides. And I think that's simply because that the state of the technology as it used to be was quite restrictive. And I'm talking about the kind of technology where you had to worry about what thread you're on when you're assigning like a button handler, that kind of thing. But by contrast, when you're making a made-to-order app these days with React Native, it's no longer this kind of superficial, simplistic thing. React Native is just so malleable and so powerful that we can actually achieve some really interesting levels of bespoke API-defined configuration, which I'm not sure has ever really been seen before. So I know that's a big statement, so I'm going to try and back it up. So what I want to do is I want to talk through what I think are the three key principles that I think are going to go in to generate the next sort of generation of made-to-order applications. So the first is that everything can be a client decision. So to properly understand this, I need to use an example. So when you're making a made-to-order app, a really simple way to add configurability to your clients is by using some kind of placeholder image, and you'll say, I'll use this image, and then I will take some URL defined by the API, and I'll use that URL contents to populate my image. And then from the outset, it seems like you've introduced like a reasonable level of configurability. However, there's been a hidden assumption that's easy to skip over, and it's that your client may not necessarily want to have an image there. They might want to have an animation or some text or a video. And by forcing it to be an image, you've constrained what your client can really do with your app. You've limited their flexibility. They can't convey their brand as effectively. So in React Native, we can work around this using something called the URI box. So the perceptive among you will notice that if I'm passing a source prop with a URI set to an image URL, this component's likely going to render an image. And if you guess that, you're right. But what's special about the URI box is that you can additionally specify a lookup table. The lookup table essentially relates content types or MIME types to React components, meaning that when your URI is passed, it is efficiently queried to determine what the content type is of the URL provided. And then via the lookup table, it will try to find the equivalent component. So in this instance, you can see I've given it an image URL. So I think by default, the URI box it's always going to default to an image content type. But if we were to provide a video of type MP4, then it would choose to render a video component in place. So you would still be sort of using this sort of generic view that can be configured by the API, but it's going to consistently render whatever content's been pulled back from the back end. So it's quite interesting how we're able to sort of embed a lot more configurability and flexibility in just a single style key from your API, because normally, you know, to achieve the similar kind of thing, you probably have to make your return data a little more complicated. So you might have to say, yeah, I'm giving this URL, by the way, this is video, by the way, this is an animation, that kind of thing. So it makes it a lot easier for us from that perspective. Next, a really interesting approach is making the unconfigurable configurable. So I mentioned previously that you really want to minimize the total number of like hard sort of compiled builds you want to make when you're developing a made-to-order app. So it means that you really want to look very closely at the things you are saying have to be a dedicated compile dependency, and really testing that assumption and trying to work out whether or not we can actually opt to serve these things from the back end instead. So a great example of this is that it's almost what I believe a platitude in React Native that a font has to be bundled in your application, right? If you want to use a custom font, you have to change the iOS plist and you have to paste a font file in your Android's assets directory. But if we use React Native custom fonts, we can very easily declare a custom fonts provider and place that at the root of our application. We can specify a font faces object, which is really high level font family definitions. So you'll see the syntax matches really closely to what we use in conventional font styling, except we've added an additional URI field. Now that URI is going to point to some remote location on your network. So, and hopefully it would be like a CDN. And then the custom font provider is actually going to manage the downloading of that font file, the caching of that font file, and then sort of hooking it up to your application at runtime. To access the custom fonts, all we have to do is use the custom font hook. We give it the high level font name that we've got. So from our theme, we said, right, I want to use H1. And what use custom font will do is basically give us all of the sort of mechanisms we need to be able to assign the custom font theme, custom font family to this text component at the point it gets downloaded. You'll be interested to probably know that this isn't just for the React Native text component. You can also use it on a text import. And if you'll notice as well, we're actually using the text component from native base. So it's really any native component which has the sort of text view type that we can interact with this library. And finally, I really want to emphasize when delivering a made-to-order application, in the future, we really need to start thinking about the fact that layout is config. So what I mean by this is that if you have competing customers with the same made-to-order app, and it does happen, if you place those applications side by side, you can pretty much tell that they're the same app, but they've just got a different skin. Partly that comes to because of the fact that obviously because of these restricted tools we've had, we've only been able to apply kind of superficial levels of customization. But I think what gives it away is the fact the layouts are consistent. So if a customer approaches you and your application has sort of like a hamburger menu and they say, I don't want that, I want to have a toolbar instead, the simplistic approach that you'd have to take with restrictive tools is like you'd say, well, we could add an enum to our API response to say, okay, use burger layout or use the toolbar. But all we do when we respond with a solution like that is we just complicate the matters. We have to kind of come around to the realization that nothing we ever do is really going to satisfy the customer. They always want a precise level of control, which is very hard to manage in a compiled build. It means that lots of Boolean toggles and switches and giant if statements to get the right level. And that's something that doesn't scale. But it does if we treat layout as config. So in this example, I'm using a library called Propertier, which supports both React and React Native. And what Propertier allows us to do is if we define a lookup table again, this time it is just filled with React components, we can give it a child property, which is a JSON object. And I'd just like to take a moment to emphasize that if we really look at this object, there's nothing dynamic or runtime going on in here. So for all intents and purposes, this is something that could just be served from a backend API. And you'll notice it uses the convention where an underscore represents a component type and a dollar represents an array of children. So you'll see that this view component has the child text component and a child URI box. So you probably notice at this stage that we're kind of getting to that level of kind of wild flexibility. You'll also notice as well that any other prop that isn't one of these two kind of reserved properties just gets treated as a regular prop for the component. So you see our view component has a style prop. Now, when this response or this JSON object is passed into Propertier, it's going to render it dynamically on the fly, meaning that in this example, we're going to have a bright blue background, which sends us the text hello world and gives us a URI box image underneath. This is obviously a simplistic example, but I would like to note that in our lookup table, I've left this comment to emphasize that these don't have to be simple components. You could just as easily have stateful sort of application aware components like those that have been connected to Redux. So I do want to emphasize that it is actually possible to write an entire application this way. I know it sounds crazy, but I've done it and it's quite surprising to see that it works. So I would just like to summarize and say that I really want everyone to take away that React Native has made make to order easy. It has been really difficult over the past few years to achieve kind of this level of configuration, but it has truly made it effortless by comparison to how it used to be. You know, I'm a single developer now, and I'm maintaining like the Android and the iOS versions of a made to order app, and you know, using traditional approaches, using like a separate Java developer and a Objective-C developer. You know, it's crazy amounts of work compared to what it used to be. And secondly, React Native makes made to order powerful. I hope what I've been able to show you from these open source repositories has emphasized that a little bit. And so that's it. I want to thank everyone for listening. If you like what I talk about, please follow me on Twitter and GitHub. I'm doing this kind of stuff all the time. And yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback and answer any questions you may have.
Alex, that was amazing. Short and sweet, just like everybody likes it.
I don't even know how long it was. I'm not sure if I just blurted everything out. Or...
Oh, no, you did just fine. So we don't really have any questions related to what you were talking about per se, but there was one question by one of our viewers. They're asking if there is a way to decrease the APK size that they're generating.
Yeah, I think that well, again, if you're using a made-to-order app, right, you're not really having to embed as many sort of compiled assets as you would have to do originally. It focuses a lot more on caching and things like that. So, you know, your APK size is reduced in that sense because you're going to be pulling that kind of information far past the application's been installed. The only other thing I can really say on top of that is that you really have to try and make sure to really stay on top of the assets that you do use in your app, because I think code and libraries, like they're not really contributing that much to the size of an application compared to you know, static assets like videos or images, and it's very easy to get into the habit of like pulling an image into your project and maybe not liking it but still leaving it there. And I think a lot of applications do end up making it to production with that approach. So you can see kind of like your memory debt increase from that perspective quite easily, I believe.
Right. I hope that answers his question and solves his doubts. One thing that I want to mention here is that I am truly surprised by the amount of usage that native base has. I mean, we were just trying to be really humble about it, but I think we should start boasting just a little because everybody is using it, and that makes
awesome.
that makes it so much better.
I think
anyway,
like native basis, it's really nailed that, like, because when you pull in a UI framework, you're making a bit of a commitment and you don't know whether it's going to really behave the way you want it to. But native base is one of the few frameworks that I've seen where it's so simple to get exactly the kind of layouts that you're going for. And additionally, like that cross-platform like security, like, you know, it works with React Native Web as well. Like, it's phenomenal. It's a really good job, you guys.
Thank you so much. And while we were talking about native base, we have two more questions for you if you have the time.
Cool. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Our fellow speaker Samip just asked, it's not really React Native related, but what software are you using for presenting, Alex?
Yeah, guys, I'm using React. Come on. So what I'm using is a really cool library called MDX Deck, and basically you use Markdown to separate your slides, but it works in the way that you can also embed React components in there, so you can just, you can use all the familiar syntax that you want, and all the animations I had were pulled from Lottie animations, which are all open source and nice. So yeah, honestly, I'm surprised not that many people really know about it, because MDX Deck is just so awesome. You can do whatever you want really easily.
Well, some of that kind of turned out to be a React Native question, so kudos on that. Anyway, Alex, thank you so much for being here. Stick around till the end of the show.
No worries. Thank you very much
and
for
we'll
having
move
me. I
on.
really
Thank
appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Anyway, so that was Alex, and he was talking about make-to-order apps. So I'm not going to keep you for long. We have just one more speaker in today's event left. And the last speaker for the day is our very own Sankhadeep Roy. He is going to be talking about authentication and managing authenticated screens with the AWS Amplify and React Navigation v5. So, Sankhadeep, is he here?
Hey. Yeah.
Hey, man, how are you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible, absolutely clear, crystal clear. A little bit about Sankhadeep. He is an engineering manager with us at GeekyAnts, which makes him a big deal. He is also a football fanatic, and he is in love with Liverpool FC. And if given the chance to buy tickets, he might even lay his life down for them. Anyway, so Sankhadeep, I am going to let you take this show away and present whatever you have on your mind today.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Hey guys. Yeah. So great talks by the speakers previous to me, Toby, Samip. I loved how he explained how easy Redux Toolkit makes it for us. Even I've been wanting to experiment with Redux Toolkit for a long time now, but yeah, now that I've seen how it actually works, I might actually give it a try. And then Alex made to order app. I think I like the way he separated the UI logic from the actual logic of the app, so you can just have one UI and you can make multiple apps just using the same UI. So yeah, that's wonderful. And yeah, of course, Vinay, the animation, I've been a fan of animations and I quite like the way he did it and the explanation. I liked it. So yeah, anyway, so I'll start off with my presentation today. I'm sharing my screen. You guys just let me know if that goes well. Okay, so I hope you guys can see my screen. I just have one screen there. So yeah, I'll be speaking about authentication using AWS Amplify. And like once we are done with the authentication part, we'll also go into React Navigation a bit, React Navigation v5, which was launched not too long ago. And then we'll see how we do the authenticated screens, and there are a few changes to what we had in version 4. So yeah, a brief introduction about me. I am Sankhadeep Roy. Like Vijay said, I'm a software engineer. I still call myself a software engineer. They have a different name for it, but yeah, I believe I'm a software engineer. Other than that, I've been working mostly with React Web, not much React Native. And in my previous projects, I've been using AWS a lot and I like it. So I thought, okay, well, why not give it a spin with React Native and see how well it does. So there are a couple of services in AWS which will really blow your mind. The one which I like most are AppSync and DynamoDB, because these are the ones I've used the most. But then AppSync just creates all the GraphQL queries for you, so you can just like describe your schema, and then the queries mutations are made for you. You can just import the queries and make the call. So yeah, that's how easy it is. And for Dynamo, it's used for storing whatever data you like fetch from, or maybe you store some data. That's what Dynamo does for you. But what I am going to speak today about is Cognito. So AWS Cognito, or Amazon Cognito as they like to call it, is it's not going. Yeah, is what they use for handling authentication. Using Cognito, you can restrict users, you can log users in there. There's a dashboard for Cognito where you can have multiple settings, and then you can configure the user permissions and whatnot. So yeah, let's look at the definition, official definition, what Cognito is. So it says Amazon Cognito lets you add users, sign up, sign in, and access control to your web and mobile apps, and support sign in with social identity providers. Yeah, you can also have social sign in with the Cognito as well, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and whatnot, a couple of more as well. So yeah, okay, so how is Amplify auth or Cognito auth different than the than the usual authentication that we do in our apps, right? So I'm not sure if this is too small, but you should be able to read it. So this is how we usually do, how I used to do previously for my apps. So we'll have services. We have one, say, for login service, one for a sign up service, and then we import them into our login files. And then, say, for signing up a user, we just call the service, and then if that's succeeded, then yeah, the user is signed up. And then to log the user in, we call the login service, which returns a promise. So then yeah, after we get the logged in user, we probably need to store the user's authorization tokens, right? Because this is what is going to be important as we move ahead, because whenever we log in a user and the next time we boot the app up, we don't want the user to be stuck on the login screen again, right? That is when we want the user to actually be redirected directly to the home screen or whatever screen you want to, right? So this is why this line here is important, as in we save it to our sync storage, and then we probably have to navigate to like a home page or whatever page we want to. I'm calling it app stack, but yeah, whatever stack you have in your app. So these are the steps we used to follow earlier for doing earlier, as in we still do it now if we are not using AWS. But yeah, so these are the steps which we do. So how different is Cognito auth, right? In the front end, it's not too difficult, it's not too different, I would say, because it's the same. You just need to import auth from AWS Amplify. Earlier you had to import two services, sign in and sign up. So here you can just import auth from AWS Amplify and then just call auth.signup. That's all that you need to do, auth.signup, and it will of course you need to pass in the params or user, password, attributes. If you're just sending the email, then just email. If you also need phone number, it takes an alternate email as well, whatever you want to. But then yeah, these are the various params you can pass. So yeah, apart from that, we also have this login. Yeah, we also have one second, just a minute. Apart from that, we have login call, which was pretty similar to the one which we did earlier. It says we can log the user in saying await auth.signin, and then after that you'll notice that here we are not storing it to the local storage anymore. So this is the reason for doing this, is that we no longer need to do this. Cognito does that for us, so that's what is pretty useful for us. So the same goes for signing a user out. If we have to sign a user out, we just need to call auth.signout, and that will sign me out. So I do not need to clear my async storage or local storage if you're on the web. So that is what I really like. So apart from just these, some Cognito features, there are some other Cognito features as well. So let's just speak about what I discussed. So auth class has functions. We have sign up, sign in, sign out. No need to save this tokens to async storage, which I spoke about. So Cognito takes care of it. Apart from authentication, the auth class also has useful helpers. By useful helpers, I mean you can change the password. If you can pass in two passwords, the old password and the new password, and it will change the password for you. Confirm sign up, if you have two-factor authentication in your app, so you can maybe give the phone number, it will send you an OTP, and then using that OTP you can confirm the user. So that is what confirm sign up does. And then we have auth.current authenticated user. This is for getting the current state of the user, if whether the user is logged in or not. So this is something which we're going to use later. And there are tons of more utility helpers. So if you go to the authentication documentation from AWS, you will see that there are plenty of util functions that you can use, which will be helpful for us. So yeah, apart from that, there are a few cognito settings. So these are the cognito settings that you'll see on the dashboard. There are tons of settings, but I'm just going to talk about a couple which I used. So yeah, you can define how the user would sign in. So whether the user will sign in with his email, or whether you want the user to sign in with his phone number. So user can have an email respond by username. Also, user can sign in with both the email and phone number. So yeah, there are plenty of settings. So when you check the dashboard, you'll probably see that there are tons of settings that you can change. So yeah, apart from that, you also have this setting for configuring the password strength, as in whether you want it to be when I wanted to require numbers, rather uppercase letters, lowercase letters, a minimum length, and whatnot. So this is also something which Cognito provides us as a setting. So if you do that, then you can go to the dashboard, and then you can also restrict users. There are lots of this, but yeah, I'm just going to speak about these as these are the ones which I have like really worked at. So yeah, so now that we have really looked at how Cognito handles the authentication and how we log in and stuff, so let's look at how we do this in the front end. As in, once it comes to our app, we log the user in, then we want to move the user to the home page, right, after they've logged in. So let's talk about navigation. This is what we'll speak about. So let's look at how we handled authentication in React Navigation version 4 and before. I don't really remember about what we had before version 4, but yeah, in version 4, this is something which we used to do. So we had something like auth stack and an app stack. So an auth stack would ideally be your login screen and your sign up screen, and maybe forgot password screen, where you show the users the screens which he needs to like fill in or authenticate himself before moving into the real app. The real app would be something like a product screen or whatever. So yeah, this is how we used to do it. As in, we had an auth stack, we had an app stack, and we also had authentication loading, right? So what authentication loading did was that this is the screen we used to load up first. As in, this is the screen that will load, that will boot up first, and there we'll check whether the user is signed in or not. So how do we do that? Since when we sign a user in or log a user in, we store their token to the async storage, right? So then we, inside this component, we check whether the async storage has the user token or not, and then based on whether the user token is present, we either redirect him to the application stack or the authentication stack. So I think something like this, yeah. So we check whether the user token is present in the async storage. If it is, then we navigate the user to the app stack, as in all the home pages and whatever we have. Otherwise, we take him to the auth stack. Right. So this is how we used to handle navigation till version 4. But then with version 5, the switch navigator is no longer there. So the doc says with React Navigation version 5, we can dynamically define and alter the screen definitions of a navigator, which makes the switch navigator unnecessary. Excuse me, I need some water. So yeah, what this means is that we can define our we can define our route separately. By separately, I mean we can have our app stack defined separate and auth stack defined separate, but inside the same navigator. So this is the stack navigator that we have, and based on whether the user is logged in or not, we can show the app stack that we have here or the auth stack. So currently in this example, the auth stack only has one screen, which is the sign-in screen, and the app stack which have home and settings. So yeah, so basically it is being the stack that is currently being shown to the user, whether it's an app stack or whether it's the real stack or the authentication stack, will be determined by this value, right? So this is what they mean by the pattern can now be defined declaratively, as in if you just change this value, based on this value, the navigator knows which screen to show. So earlier, like in our previous example, we saw that we had to log the user in and then navigation that navigate. So that is a step we no longer need here. So as long as we can access this value and change this value from any of our screens, then we are going to render the stack based on whatever this value is, right? So but then there's a problem with this. The problem is that the is logged in value would be changed from various screens, right? So if you're on sign in screen, you will be after you sign the user in, you'll need to change it. Or maybe once you're logged in inside the app, you might need to change it from your profile screen, or if you have a logout button in the header, you want to log the user out. So yeah, you might need to change it from various screens. So this value here should be at a state higher than this component, right? So the React navigation doc suggests using something like the React context for doing it. And so yeah, that's what I have done as well. So what we need to do is we need to have a context, suppose something like an auth context, and then have this value is logged in, and then have another function for changing the is logged in value. And then we can pass this function to all our components which are dealing with login in or login out, and then based on that we can just log the user in or out, right? So yeah, let's take a look. So this is what the auth context looks like. So we have
Um, I think Shankhadeep lost his internet connection in the middle. Yeah, he just disconnected. Uh, we'll probably we apologize for this inconvenience. I do not know. We are working with him to get his connection back up online very quickly. Uh, so just hang in there with us. I think he's connecting back. Hi,
Hey
I think you
Digvijay.
lost your connection in the middle.
Yes, there was a power cut here. I don't know what just happened. The backup is up
Okay,
now,
okay.
so yeah, all
Perfect,
good,
perfect,
all good.
perfect. Continue.
Sure, I'll take it from here. Yeah. Hey, sorry about that. So yeah, I was saying that we have two values: is signed in and set is signed in. Is signed in is for checking whether the user is logged in or not, and set is signed in is the function that we call to change that value. So okay, this is the auth context provider that we have. So what we need to do is have the entire app, as in, or at least the components that need this context to be wrapped inside it. So what I have done here, okay, where is it? Yeah, so that's what I've done. I have wrapped the app, that is the navigator. I'll show you the code in a while. I've got it open. So I realized later that I missed a couple of slides, but yeah, no worries. I've got this open here as well. So I'll be able to show you guys that as well. But yeah, so what we are doing here is that in our navigation file, whenever the navigation boots up, as in the file boots up, we check whether the user is authenticated or not. So earlier, how we used to do it was we used to make a call to async storage to see whether the token is stored or not, and based on whether the token is there, we navigate the user to the relevant stack, right? But here using AWS, all we need to do is call this function, that is current authenticated user. So if this call succeeds, that means that the user is currently logged in. So based on that, I just set our value, our signed in value, to true, right? So like we discussed, if we can change it from anywhere in our app, and then the navigation will take care of it. We do not want to navigate to any specific screen or such. So yeah, that's what it does. This is how we can, like, on booting our app, this is how we check whether the user is logged in or not, right? So how do we do it when you're logging in, right? So this is for checking whether the user is logged in or not. But suppose we are in the home screen now, as in our login screen. So from there also we need to log the user in, right? So this is how we do it. Like we saw earlier, we call auth.signin with our params, And then after it succeeds, we just say set is signed in to true. And set is signed in is a value is a function which we are getting from the auth context that we had created, right? So yeah, this is how it does it. So I'll just show you the app that I have right now in the code, that so that it makes a bit more sense. So yeah, this is basically the app navigation file that I have. Oh, it's gonna let me get rid of this. So yeah, is signed in is here, and then whether the user is signed in or not, I show the login screen. Other than that, I show the home and the create screen, and I'm checking the user session. I call get authenticated user, and then I'm up. In addition to just setting the user status, whether the user is signed in or not, I also set a couple of data there, as in the user's username and email. That is because I later require this in my app. So it depends whether you want it or not. So let me just show you how this works. So currently I'm logged out, and when I do a refresh, I'm still in the logged out state. And then let me just log in. 5, 6. Okay, so this has logged me in. So now I'm in the logged in state, right? So now what happened was that in the login screen, I called auth.signin, and then after it got succeeded, I saved the username and email. So the username I'm seeing here is coming from the context that I saved, the set user, and then I also set sign in to true. So now what happens is that if I refresh my app, it should directly take me to the home page. Yes, that's what it did, right? Because then it it checked here whether I was signed in or not, and then it set it to true, and then yeah, that's how it handled it. But yeah, if you see when I reload for a brief while, you actually see the login screen before we get navigated to here. That is because initially the value of is signed in is set to false. So what ideally we would like to do is that when we make a call, we can have a loader or the splash screen that will show up before this gets resolved, and then based on the response, we can either show the login screen or the logged out screen, right? So also, some of you might have a question whether, like, if we are logged in, can we go back to the login screen like by just clicking the back button, right? So let me show you how that works. So suppose this is my post screen, right, where we can edit or create posts. So if I swipe back, I can come to the previous screen, but then if I swipe back from here, it no longer does it. So yeah, the login screen is completely removed from our stack at this state. So let me try to log out and see how that works. I just logged out, and then I try to go back. It doesn't work for me, and I refresh, and I'm still in the logged out page, right? So yeah, that is how I did it. I don't know, like some of you might have a different way of doing it, but yeah, I pretty much like this implementation, and for me it's pretty simple. The docs also have a way of doing it with context, but they were using use reducer, which I really did not need for my example here. But yeah, if some of you actually think that that is a better implementation and there are some added advantages of that, please let me know. I'll be eager to know what I missed here. So yeah, I think that should be it. If any of you guys want a link to this app or uh, to this repo, actually I've created a tutorial for this where I speak about, like, where I explain from scratch as in adding AWS Amplify to a React Native app with all the API GraphQL requests, and also basically here's this app that you see. 1 second. Yeah, so basically this app. So here you can create a new post and then edit posts based on the owner. So if you're the owner, then only you can edit this post and all that. So yeah, AWS using AppSync and DynamoDB really made it easy for me. So yeah, let me know if any of you guys want access to this code. I'll be pushing it to GitHub in a couple of days. So yeah, that should do it. So let me see if there are any more slides. No more slides. Thank God. So yeah, this is my Twitter handle if you want to follow me, and my GitHub username is this. That's where you'll find the repository if you're interested. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you, Sankhadeep, for
Yeah.
the
Hey,
presentation. We have one question from just another gamer. He is asking, how do
Okay.
you think router flux holds up in comparison to navigation v5?
I think router flux also internally uses React navigation. I'm not exactly sure which version it is, V5 or V4. I'm not really sure. But then it depends on like what API you're more comfortable with. If you're more comfortable with the router flux API, you can go ahead with it because performance-wise, I really don't think there will be a difference because under the hood, it's basically the same implementation. So yeah, whatever floats your boat, I guess.
Right. And people are also requesting for the GitHub repo. So I think you'll be posting it on your Twitter. So everybody who
Yes,
wants it,
yes,
go
yes.
follow him on Twitter and you'll get it there. And we will also be posting
Yeah,
the GitHub repo link in the description here. Uh,
sure.
so with this, everybody, we have arrived at the end of today's React Native remote meetup. If it is not too much to ask, can I have all the speakers join with me on the screen right now? Samip is on mute, I suppose. There they are. Toby is not here with us. I think he had some other things to take care of, so he couldn't. He had to leave a little early. So, ladies and gents, children of all ages, I present to you today's uh, lineup for everywhere. Alex is here too. This is today's lineup, and I hope that you took a lot of information from them. And I hope that it was, and I hope you found it interesting and information, full of information. I personally want to convey a heartfelt thanks to all of you for and Toby for being here with us from different time zones and taking the time to talk to us and to everybody who is viewing us at the moment. Uh, I also want to thank all the viewers on our different streaming platforms for being with us through these 2 hours and 15 minutes of all things React Native. I know it's a little exhausting, but thank you for sticking here with us. And I hope that we have delivered on the promise that we made to you through this meetup. I also want to make a special mention to everybody who has been working on the backstage to make this event happen. Rishabh, Maheshwari, Shweta, Gaurav, all of them deserve our congratulations and all the praise because they are the ones who made it happen. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, I'm back. I'm back.
Yeah.
Before me and the team we take our leave, I'd like to mention a few things. Since we are in the midst of a very difficult time, and things are happening out of nowhere, and they don't look like they're going to stop anytime soon. Just remember that it's not too bad, and be nice to everybody. Be thoughtful, be compassionate, and that is how we can all get through this. Also, I want to mention the fact that if anybody of you thinks that its life is getting a little too tough, talk to someone about it. It helps, you know. Uh,
Vijay, are you there? Oh,
I think he doesn't want to talk to us.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Rishabh,
Rishabh, you are muted if you're speaking.
You're muted.
am I back?
We'll be back, I guess. He's trying to connect. He's back.
Yes, yes, we are there. Yeah.
Well, we have Rishabh as well. Rishabh is one of the team members who've been working at the backend, and he just left. Never mind. You saw him. He's the one that's making everything happen. He's back. Hello again. Uh, do remember to join us and follow us on Twitter at the rate RNBLR and at the rate GeekyAnts. Join our meetup group at meetup.com to stay updated with everything that we have. The information is on your screen right now. You will get all the information for our future events here. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being here again. Thank you all the speakers for joining us, and namaste.